Welcome to Soul Adventure TV, where we explore what may very well be an unprecedented opportunity in humanity's spiritual and physical evolution, and the choices standing before each and every individual to walk on this grand adventure or not. Do we really know who and what we are and what we can choose to be? I'm your host and fellow soul adventurer, Steve Crow.
Today's guest is Rasha. Her talent is unique, and so is her story. It was the summer of '87, and at the time, Rasha was not channeling, but rather earned her living as a Nashville songwriter. She was alone, sitting by a lake and scribbling lyrics for a love song on the back of an envelope. Then, out of the blue, she suddenly hears the whispered words, "I love you," and experiences what Rasha describes as a blasting wide open of her heart chakra, followed by a stream of mind-stretching spiritual concepts and information flooding into her consciousness. Since 1998, Rasha has served as the channel for a universal, divine presence calling itself Oneness, which in turn led to her publishing a book of channel teachings called, simply, Oneness. A second volume of teachings from Oneness will be published in 2013 called A Journey to Oneness, a Chronicle of Spiritual Emergence. Rasha, welcome to Soul Adventure TV.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. It's great having you.
It's lovely to be here.
This is an interview I've really been looking forward to. I think I showed you my copy of the book Oneness and how many tabs I had and how much I had underlined, and it's a well-worn copy. So I can't wait to have this opportunity to talk more in depth with you. Let's start at the beginning. Your experience sitting by that lake and suddenly hearing a whispered voice. Now, that sounds pretty dramatic. Did you have any prior psychic or channeling experiences before this event, or was I correct to say it came out of the blue for you?
Nothing. It was out of the blue. I was admiring a beautiful scene on a summer day. Sailboats on a lake, sparkles on the water. It was just gorgeous. And in the appreciation of the beauty of that scene, I realized afterwards that I had had a heart chakra open, a spontaneous one. And I heard 2 words or 3 words, "I love you." And I realized that was not my thought. And so the conversation continued. And that was the beginning for me.
What was your immediate reaction? Was it easy to accept these new abilities, or did it take some time to adjust to this different view of reality?
Yeah, I was stunned. I never dreamed in a million years this was going to happen to me. These were the days where people had just begun to channel openly. So I was aware of the phenomenon and actually had a good friend who was doing that, but it's nothing I ever sought or ever dreamed that I would be doing myself. It came spontaneously, and the first contact was with Rama, the Hindu god. Ram. And there was a past life connection that I was given detailed information about, and I realized that these were not my thoughts. In fact, I didn't have this information. So I was stunned and intrigued at the same time.
I imagine going from being a Nashville songwriter to a channel must have involved a rather large change to your lifestyle, obviously your career, perhaps your relationships, and so on. Am I correct?
I can't say that right off the bat I considered myself a channel. It took years to ease into the process of this and to be trained properly in how to do this. That initial contact was the barest tip of the iceberg of what then came to unfold for me and the journey that I went on in the process.
Why do you think this experience happened to you? Do you believe you agreed to it beforehand, or?
Yeah, they say that you sign up for this before coming into this lifetime. I was subsequently told that being a channel was to be my life's work, and I thought that's crazy. That's no, you gotta be kidding.
I like that. No.
No way. No way. But as time went on, it started to make sense to me. Steve, it was too easy for me. It was like breathing. Immediately, we went from the lakeside initial conversation to every night at midnight hearing the words, get a pencil. And I would run and get a pencil. I was sitting out on my veranda with a cup of coffee, and I would just write whatever came into my head. And then afterwards read it in stunned disbelief. Like, oh my God, what have I written? And that's how I got into this.
And is that how you transcribed Oneness, the book Oneness, or had you switched to a computer by then, or what? How did you do that?
The book Oneness began in 1998, 10 years later.
Hmm.
The initial contact was 1987. And a lot of practice and training came into play between the initial contact and the point where I was ready to encounter a presence at the level of oneness. You don't just jump into that. By then, I had already written and published The Calling, which was the first book. That was the teachings of Amitabh, which is the Father consciousness, and I am told an aspect of Lord Shiva. But this information came years later. I couldn't begin to explain who these presences were, but what was undeniable was the level of vibration that accompanied these contacts. It was off the charts. It was something that I could never have imagined or made up in my wildest dreams, accompanied consistently by states of bliss that were just indescribable. So those were the clues that I was on track.
In the opening chapter of your current book, Oneness begins by introducing itself this way: "We are oneness. We are the embodiment of the God force, as are you." So the first thing that I notice, obviously, is the word "we." Are we then to understand that oneness might be understood as a kind of group or universal consciousness versus some kind of more singular entity?
That question comes up a lot for me. Oneness has always referred to themselves as we. And when you think about it, which pronoun can you use? You cannot use it, he or she. And in fact, oneness is a multidimensional presence as one. So technically, the only pronoun that language gives us that's appropriate is we. Oneness refers to themselves as we, and I refer to them as they. And if you have a better suggestion, let me know.
I think that's well said. Now here's an area that gets a little less clear for me. They describe themselves as an embodiment of the God force, and by that they do not seem to be saying that they are the one and only or the prime source itself, or what we might call the God in big capital letters, but rather a very close expression of that force. Do I basically have that understanding correct, or how would you describe their relationship to the God?
Well, you're thinking in linear terms. Oneness is not linear. Oneness is exponential. So it's not a matter of an either or, that we are an aspect of oneness ourselves, and the absolute, which is the all-encompassing, is oneness also. And in between, there is a vast exponential variety of expressions of oneness, all of which are the same as in their essence. For example, if you ask the drop from the ocean what it is, it can only answer, we are ocean. Its essence is ocean. It is no less ocean than the whole thing, but it is not the whole thing. So my experience of contact with oneness has not been a static one. You get increasingly augmented versions of oneness as the process goes on. And the complexity of the information received changes accordingly. That's been my experience of it. So you start on the first day with the beginner's course.
Right.
That was my experience of it. It's become more and more complex as time has gone.
I know one of the things that you really emphasize to others who are working with channeled information is the necessity to be safe and very much discerning about what they might actually be communicating with and the intentions behind that communication. At the start of your journey, how did you satisfy your own discernment when it came to the information that you were receiving?
Oh, that's a powerful question. I was very carefully trained by Amitabh, who was my first real spiritual teacher and was the source of the information in the column as to how to do this. And in simple terms, it's keyed into how does the information feel, not how does it sound to my logical mind or does it make sense, but do I get a heart chakra opening when I focus on this information, or do I get a bad feeling in my solar plexus? And that initially was where you start in determining whether or not this is worth listening to. Because as we all know, there's a lot of stuff out there. There are full range of varieties of consciousness, entities, whatever you want to call it, that would love to grab the microphone and get your attention. And as spiritual seekers, we sometimes are a bit naive and want to believe the best of if we've had contact or if we're in an audience hearing something, we want to believe it's true. A very good rule of thumb is tune into how does information feel. Not so much how does the information, does it make sense to you mentally, which is not a way. There were other techniques that I was taught and that I lectured on in the beginning that had to do with a fingerprinting system, a color coordinated fingerprinting system. And I came to understand that if you close your eyes, if you're in an audience, you can actually see color patterns that are tied into particular entities. So if you are seeing colors, if you can see colors, and many people can, that are at the higher end of the spectrum or golden, chances are this may be something you would wish to give credence to and listen. If this was at the lower end of the spectrum or gray or black, you might want to question it. Think twice.
One of the other things I most appreciate about your work is the emphasis you place on encouraging people to seek out a personal experience of connecting with the divine, be it that inner divine essence of ourselves or perhaps even something beyond this, like a oneness. How can we experience that connection for ourselves without relying on someone else to serve as the channel or guru who passes that information along?
That actually is what there is to have. And I know most of us have, at this point, read a lot of books, and we understand theoretically what is happening on the planet, what is happening within ourselves. We have encountered a lot of philosophy, and we've encountered it with our minds. So we've embraced this as belief. What there is to have has nothing to do with belief. What you're after is what oneness calls knowingness. This is an understanding that has to do with a heart connection, where you have had that connection for yourself. There is no doubt. There is no question. You know, you simply know. It's not a question of, do I believe in a higher power? Do I not believe in a higher power? It's not a matter of consensus of how many spiritual teachers have told me this is true or how many books I've read. This has to do with, have you tasted it for yourself? If you have, then you know, and there's no more question. What's wonderful about the book Oneness is this prepares us step by step to have this experience. Each of us, because I am told by Oneness that this is our birthright. Every single one of us is calibrated to have this experience in these times. So this is not a 1 in a million thing that happens to people who hide in caves in the Himalayas necessarily in these times. Hundreds of years ago, yes, it was a rare thing that somebody could have an experience like this. And after a lot of austerities, some people managed it. But in these times, lots of people are waking up and having these exquisite moments for themselves where you know you've been touched by something that there's no words for and is holy. You know. And when you've had that experience, you naturally want to have it again.
Have it again, yes.
Do it more. And so your life often becomes prioritized in a very different way.
You mentioned the times that we are living in, and I'd like to delve into that a little bit. One of the things that I feel strongly about is that we are now experiencing, as a species, a planet, a very special time of evolution and change, should we accept it. And I think that's an important caveat. It's a matter of individual choice. But how does this fit in with what Oneness teaches regarding the process of ascension? Does Oneness also talk about this time as being different?
This time is extremely different from other times. And you have to ask yourself why. What's happening that is causing so many people to seek a spiritual connection all of a sudden and to make this a priority in their lives? And the answer is that there is a wave of energy flooding this planet that is giving us a leg up on the ride, where in previous times it might have taken hundreds of years to make the quantum leaps that we're making individually and collectively as a populace. Now it can be done not only in a lifetime, but in a generation, in many cases in just a few years, depending on the choices you make, the priorities you set in your life. I was going to say there's another point too. When we talk about ascension, most of us think about our ascension as human beings, but it's bigger than that. The entire cosmos, the entire creation is ascending. Everything is returning to oneness. So not just incarnate identity, such as ourselves, but consciousness we may come to understand as our higher selves or alternate aspects of consciousness, multidimensional aspects of our own being. All of this collectively is coming together. So what there is for us to do before we become one with each other is to become one with ourselves. That's the work. That's the task at hand. To become whole. And then you're a candidate for being embraced by your higher self. Because your higher self is not interested in pulling in a fragment of you. They want all of you. So that's the work, is in pulling together all your bits, collecting all the cards in your deck. And the book Oneness talks a lot about that.
Indeed. During what many people call the shift, another term, we are told that people will, quote, wake up to their true nature. What do you think will be the impact on our human societies as more and more people experience this awakening?
We're seeing it already. Structures are crumbling. Structures that one might have thought were carved in stone. And this touches every aspect of our culture, our religions, our businesses, governments. All of this is shifting because individually, each of us is transforming. But take all of those individual bits. Collectively, we as a populace are transforming vibrationally. So that the augmented vibration each of us contributes to the whole, collectively, has ascended. It's a given that what is reflected back to us as our reality has to shift. It can't be otherwise. That's why we have so much change going on all of a sudden. And it's not a bad thing. Things may crumble, but that's not a bad thing. Because in order for change to come about, the old gives way to the new that's coming.
Let's dip briefly into two. Well, they're pretty big areas, and that is the nature of our reality as humans, and then this concept of time as we understand it. For me, both those words, reality and time, they're kind of fuzzy in my mind. But oneness challenges us to accept that we are creating our own reality through intention, and that we should not just assume, well, stuff just happens around me, and maybe I get a chance to react to it, but I don't control it. How do you, Rasha, personally think about reality and time?
Oh my gosh, that's a big one. Well, absolutely, there is no time. It's all happening now. We prove this to ourselves over and over again. Reality, yes, we create it, but it's not a matter of just thinking positive thoughts. That's a very simplistic kind of a perspective on the science of manifestation and how we bring our thoughts and intentions into form. It's a huge subject. So there's a 400-page book called Oneness that's about a lot of this. If you think about time, you can only think about now, because that's all there is. There is now. When you're dwelling in the past, you are giving energy to something that cannot be changed. If you are projecting into the future, you are empowering something that may not come to be. All you can do is to focus your intent with absolute heart-centered connection and focus on what you can do now. What can you do now to bring this about? And to envision the highest and the best always.
It occurs to me that if a person is going to accept that they are indeed manifesting their own reality, then they have to take responsibility for a lot of things that, as I was mentioned before, that we might have just blamed on, stuff happens. How have you been able to prove to yourself that you, Rasha, are indeed creating your own reality? How is that? How, you know what I mean?
How did I prove it to myself? Constantly. Constantly. The energy you bring into the moment determines the outcome. By shifting the energy you bring to the moment, you can totally shift a scenario in a heartbeat. I've done it over and over again. If I'm sitting and worrying about something, you're on automatic pilot, right? You're projecting into the future. Such and such is going to happen. Oh my God, what if? And all of that stuff that we do. And then you say, wait a minute, time out. So you, in that moment, might meditate during your time out. For myself, I might chant mantras for a while and then go back to the dilemma. It doesn't seem nearly as hopeless. I don't feel like I'm in its grasp, at the mercy of it, and consistently I get a better case scenario than I thought was going to come if I do that. So I've proved to myself constantly that this is all vibrationally based. The energy I bring to the moment determines what I experience as having happened, quote unquote. In fact, it is all happening, all at the same time, no differently than all the radio shows on the radio are all happening right now. The opportunity is, which one do I want to tune in and listen to? Which one do I want to give credence to as having happened as my experience and put that on the thread of what I consider to be my life? That's up for grabs. And that's interesting because we are not at the mercy of happenstance. We are very much making a difference. And the way we do that is by being aware of the energy you bring to the moment. It's the key to everything. And I learned a lot of that the hard way.
As we try and envision this shift into the coming new world, one of the things that stands out is this idea, for me anyways, of manifestation, of near instant manifestation into form. And the reason that intrigues me is that I know for myself, I have a lot of random thoughts that kind of, flitter in and out of my mind, and some of them I wonder where the heck, those come from. Um, so in a environment where those things could then take form, I mean, to me that sounds like we really need to be able to get control over our thoughts and our words. Um,
Oh, yes. Your words are powerful. Um, as you said that, I thought of a wonderful illustration that happened to me in India. It was 2002. I was standing 6 o'clock in the morning in a train station in pouring rain, um, about to board a train for Haridwar, and realized I hadn't brought any food with me. And if you've ever been in India on a train, you may not want to eat what's available on a train. I was going to be on that train for 8 hours. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in trouble. And then on the other side of the track, I noticed a pushcart with bananas. And with a heartfelt expression, I said out loud, God, I sure wish there were bananas on this track. And there was a kid with a backpack standing next to me. He looked at me. Um, Not more than a minute later, a train came barreling into that station. It had bananas, all green, out of every window, out of every door. I have never seen so many bananas in my life. The train didn't stop. It kept going. And the kid looked at me like, oh my God, but he got it. I had said it with such passion. And that I realized later was the key to it. The really heartfelt wanting of it without an attachment to how it was going to manifest. God, I sure wish there were bananas on this track. Well, there surely were bananas on that track. The fact is, I wasn't able to get them to eat, but I refined my request. I sure wish there were bananas that I could eat on this train. And in the next station, a pushcart came right under my window with ripe bananas. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. But it's those very simple little stories that begin happening to you that illustrate for you how you are creating this with passion. What's interesting about this story is that the manifestation was instantaneous. It happened in less than a minute. I had a similar kind of a story that had happened 15 years earlier. Um, I was in a print shop and I was going in to have a map framed, and on the wall were two prints that I thought were just beautiful. They were very expensive, and in those days I wasn't going to spend money on a print that I didn't actually require, but I enjoyed it. And every time I went in there, I appreciated, without any attachment, those two beautiful prints. 6 weeks later, I went to the flea market, and there were those two prints side by side, framed under glass for $5 each. I got it. I couldn't believe it. But what's interesting about these two stories is the prints took me 6 weeks to manifest. The bananas came in a minute. What was the difference? The difference was in the 15 years between those two illustrations, not only had my own personal vibration accelerated, but the world we were living in was a different world vibrationally. 15 years ago, we were in a totally different reality. And so in those days, the time lag between the inception of a thought and its manifestation as an event took longer. So we didn't really make the connection that we were creating this. Now, things are happening quickly because our vibration, individually and collectively, is much higher. So as you approach the fifth dimensional threshold, you get the phenomenon of instantaneous manifestation. And in fact, that's how you can tell that you are well along on the ride, is how fast does it come? Is it taking you a week, a month, or are you getting it right away? And it's very interesting as you watch this happen in your own life.
You know, you mentioned the fifth dimension, and as we approach that level, will our physical bodies need to change? Will we still be in physical form, or perhaps in our light bodies, or some combination of those? What does Oneness have to say about that?
You will be in physical form. And it's all happening here. And it will continue to happen here. You're not going to go to a different place. You are not going to dematerialize, pulverize, or anything like that. You are still you. That's the bottom line. No matter how far you journey spiritually in your realization of who and what you are, you manifest as your God self in form. You're still you. You're still looking through these eyes and perceiving the world. But it's you who's looking at it. The difference is the you who you are will have changed. You'll be seeing a bigger picture. You'll be seeing it in a vaster perspective, not only a myopic vision. That's what's happening. That's what we've been experiencing.
What does Oneness have to say about how we'll be spending our time in the fifth dimension?
That would be a matter of personal choice.
Okay, all right. So things like jobs. Are we?
You're still in a physical body. The physical body still needs a roof over its head and food in its stomach. You're still a physical being until you're not. So I expect that I will still be in the world. I may not be of the world. I may realize that I'm not of the world, but in fact, I'm functioning in this world. So I would be subject to all the requirements of physicality until I'm not in physical form anymore. That's what I'm anticipating.
You mentioned that we are going to be here, and I'd like to delve into that just a second. Do you think that there will be multiple versions of here, multiple frequency levels of Earth?
There already are. There already are. No differently than the radio show analogy that we talked about before. All of the different variations of possibility are happening here. And which one you experience is keyed into the vibration you bring to the moment. Which one can you tune in? Are you going to tune in a best case scenario? Are you going to possibly give yourself some challenges and setbacks? It's a matter of choice. We're creating it. And that's what's exciting about this, is you are not a victim. And there isn't only one destiny carved in stone. You can make a difference, keyed into the vibration that you bring to the moment. How do you augment your vibration is a whole science. That's the opportunity we have to really get what is really happening here. And yes, you can make a difference, and you can have a very comfortable ride through these changes. Or you can crawl down the spiritual path on your hands and knees. That's also an option. And learn everything the hard way. I've done it both ways. I think all of us have.
Now, Rasha, I understand that you, like me, are a bit of a recluse. And yet you have this very popular book out there. How did the word about the book spread when you're not necessarily going out there doing a big PR push?
Yeah. This is a very interesting phenomenon because I haven't really promoted this book much at all. It originally came out in 2003. The second edition came out in 2006. And all this time I've been living in India. I started to realize that this book was being gifted from friend to friend all over the world. And it's become what's being referred to as an underground spiritual classic. It's a phenomenon, and now it has sold over 100,000 copies, in spite of me, not because I'm out there promoting it really. Um, Things like a website and Facebook are very recent manifestations, only because I've been pushed to do that. But by nature, I'm focused in my own devotional practice. I live in a sacred place in India at the foot of the mountain Arunachala, which is one of the power spots of the earth. And the book has a life of its own somehow. This book has its own destiny. I just needed to get out of the way and allow it to do what it's here to do for people.
That's interesting that you mentioned that because it's been my understanding that spiritual books of the nature of yours are when they're channeled, it's actually almost an imprinting of frequency onto the pages that when a person reads the book and these kind of books and are open to it, that they actually get a benefit from it more than just the kind of the intellectual understanding. That there might actually be a frequency elevation that occurs. Has Oneness mentioned anything along those lines, or has that
Absolutely.
just,
Yeah, absolutely. This is a phenomenon. And people write to me through email all the time describing what they're feeling when they read this book. It's off the charts. I can't explain how it works, but that it works is unquestionable. And also, people are reporting that they are living the book, as I was. That for some reason they'll read a chapter or two and then they'll want to put it down for a while. They don't know why. They'll just close the book. That is to give you a space in which to have an experience so that you are learning this material not mentally, but experientially from your own living illustrations of it. And this has happened to too many people for it to be an accident. Um, I am being told that thousands, thousands of letters that I've got have described this process, and of course, it happened to me too. So it's exciting when you see that this is real, that that you are on a journey. Oneness is not a book; it's a journey.
so? Rasha, I mentioned that there is an upcoming second volume of Oneness Teachings, and I know we're all very excited to learn what might be in there. Do you have any give us a little hint about what we might be learning in that second volume?
Yeah, it's all the trials and tribulations that this particular guinea pig went through in going on the journey. As I was transcribing the book, Oneness, I started to recognize that I was living the book, that things were happening to me that were perfect illustrations of what it was I had just written. So luckily, Oneness had encouraged me to write everything down. And I would tell about something that happened in my day, and then Oneness would give me personal guidance about it. I assumed that guidance was just for me. This was personal stuff. Years later, Oneness said, and oh, by the way, all of these teachings, which by then were 3,000 pages long, this is going to be the foundation of another book. And I said, no way. Wait a minute, that wasn't the deal. I said I transcribed the book Oneness. I didn't say I was going to share my personal life, but over the years, I came to realize that those teachings were not just for me; it was for all of us. So what I did was I wove a tapestry of the teachings that I was given um, with a narrator's overview of what was happening in the life of this individual that would have prompted such teachings to come. And then woven into that were some of my dialogues with Oneness too, which got very interesting, and how Oneness replied to my questions. And some of it is very personal, some of it is extremely intense, and it goes light years beyond where the book Oneness went. It goes into subjects like how do you experience deities? What's the difference between channeling and encountering a divine presence? How to recognize it? There were some extraordinary things that were happening to me that I've shared in this book. So it's very exciting. It's coming together and will be out in the spring, God willing. It is a tome, 560 pages long so far, already set in type. So it's just a matter of the finishing touches now, and I'm doing it myself. I'm self-publishing this book.
Do you anticipate there'll be a do you anticipate there'll be a Kindle version or
I hope so. With the new book, it's a little more complicated because it's in 3 different fonts to distinguish between the voice of Oneness, my voice, and the narrator. So those are technicalities we're working through. Because Kindle, I think it can only be 1 font. How they handle that, I don't know. But it will definitely be a book. That I can tell you.
So if people want to keep up to date with what's happening with Rasha, with Oneness, with the teachings, what are some of the resources that you offer for people to do that?
There is actually a wonderful website. It's onenesswebsite.com. And there you can find out about 3 email series, 2 wonderful email series that give you quotations a couple of times a week with gorgeous photography. There's another recent one that's audio clips from the audiobook of Oneness that comes almost a year's worth. I mean, it's called A Moment of Oneness. You can close your eyes and ponder a paragraph, a particular paragraph. And all of this is absolutely free. Go to the Oneness website, onenesswebsite.com. You can sign up for one or both of these. There's a newsletter that gives you bulletins, occasional excerpts from recent teachings that come through. There are all sorts of things like that. There are 2 Facebook pages recently launched where there's lots of beautiful quotations for pondering and photography that can just give you a fraction of a moment's reprieve from your busy day and think about something you may want to apply to it. There's also a meditation CD, I should mention, that was done with composer Jim Oliver's, world famous for his gorgeous music. Those are not teachings from the book Oneness. That's recent teachings. And that's calibrated to take people right into the heart space. So these are meditations, maybe 7 minutes or 15 minutes long. There are 7 of them that you can use as a prelude to your own silent meditation to put you right into the heart before you start your meditation. It's a wonderful tool. And that's also available on the website.
Excellent. Rasha, I'd like to thank you for, first of all, being so generous with your time and for sharing your insights and experiences with our audience. As always, we invite viewers to leave comments, questions, and guest recommendations on the Soul Adventure TV website or on YouTube or Facebook. And please feel free to share this video. This information, it's meant for everyone. Until next time, this is Steve Crow, your host, wishing you an enlightening and fulfilling soul adventure. Bye, Rasha.
Bye-bye, Steve. Thanks so much.